Like Helena always suggests, and I guess which is always good to know a little bit behind the person that presents themselves, to you here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am 42 years old. I don't know if anybody else have a problem with age. I actually don't have a problem with age. I was born and raised in Manhattan, New York, until my family decided to make Aliyah to Israel when I was 15. Going into 11th grade, that was loads of fun, but life seems to have worked out. So I moved to Israel, and I've been here for about 26 years now, I guess, do the math. And I currently live in Modi'in with my husband and 4 children. I absolutely love traveling, which we started doing with our kids a whole bunch of years ago. By profession, I studied in Bar Ilan. I have a degree in social work and a master's in clinical sociology and family therapy, which I then actually never went into. I always liked business and numbers, and I worked in medical startups, and eventually found my way to mortgages. And I guess that's where I started using some of my people skills and social work, because I really just like helping people. And that then led me to actually also, as a side business, I'm not only a mortgage consultant, but I'm also a health and weight loss coach. So anybody who would like to talk about that, we won't concentrate on that now, but that is something else that I do after having gone through my own journey and struggling with my weight my entire life, having lost 50 pounds plus and kept it off. I continue to use all my previous degrees in helping people in any way I can. I guess that's my talent. Unlike Kenneth, I cannot juggle, but I love talking to people and helping people in any way I can. And I developed a love for running, and I ran my first half marathon right before we all started lockdown at the Tel Aviv Marathon in February. Okay, so that is, if anybody else has any questions about me, that's just a little bit about myself. And now let's get to mortgages. So I'm not gonna overcomplicate things. I really don't want to bore you because it is a lot of details, but that is something that I always then appreciate, because I offer it in terms of taking those details and some of that drive with the numbers and stuff off your head. So we're gonna go through some mortgage basics that are really good for any just layman, any person who wants to even think about buying a home, which is also a real benefit to even having any form of networking. Because when people ask what other kind of professional is best for you to get recommendations from, so yes, real estate attorneys are amazing, and I work hands in hands with them constantly when dealing with mortgages, but everybody has family or friends or knows somebody or just has a conversation with somebody and they're talking about buying a home. So there are some regular basics that I'd love just to be able to even impart to you. And then that way, if anybody you hear of that's looking for, a mortgage, that I'm happy to go into basics and details with them. So we will go over not very complicated ways, just the basics of a mortgage loan. How much can somebody borrow? And how do you even apply for a mortgage? What other requirements are needed? We will touch on some mortgage loans and rates. Again, if anybody wants specifics, I'm happy to go into that after. But I definitely don't think I can talk about numbers and juggle at the same time. So should I stop bringing up the juggling? If you missed it, then I'm sorry, that was just awesome. And then, of course, refinancing for anyone who already has a mortgage and wants to know, well, maybe that's not it, or maybe there's something else that they can do, or what it entails once you have a mortgage, what else can you do? Okay, so let's get into the question that comes up all the time. How much can I borrow, right? That's the first thing. And that's when I tell people that I help you from A to Z, is figuring out what you can even afford all the way, like I say, until you get your key. So how much can a buyer borrow really can be answered with 2 additional questions. You have to understand first what the value of the property you're buying, and how much can you afford to pay back? That is a big part of it. So let's just split that up into two parts. And again, if anybody would like to ask anything at any time, I like talking to people. I really don't necessarily love presenting. So if you have a question, feel free to interrupt me. And I'm happy to answer on the spot and turn this into a discussion. So what is the value of the property you're buying? The reason why this is so important, because not everybody can borrow the same amount on a property. Okay, Israeli residents can get up to 75% on their first property, up to 50% financing on their second property. And a foreign resident, if you are not Israeli, can get up to, well, only they get 50, they can get up to 50% of the purchase price. Was somebody asking something, or that was just unmute?
And that was just someone speaking.
Oh, okay. The value of the property is really important to know, because you have to be able to know what you're going to have to put down as a down payment. And this is what is of vital importance as opposed to in many other countries. First, if I can give you the best advice, forget everything you know about taking out loans in other countries. Does not really apply here, except for basic math that you're going to be doing. But in America, you get, just don't forget about it. That's my job. I will help you through all the annoying stuff that happens here and the differences between Israel and, and other countries. And we'll concentrate on what you can get here and use it to your benefit. So you need to be able to know what you're putting down. So if you're an Israeli and you can maximum get 75% financing on your home, you have to have that 25% to put down. Not only that, you need to have 25% to put down, and then you have to make sure you still have other stuff put aside for all other extras. The loans in Israel are only on the properties, okay? It does not include, you can't include in what you're borrowing for purchase tax or to pay your legal fees or even to pay me. It's on the loan. So that's why the value of your property is very, very important, because you need to know how much you need to put down and also how much you're then also going to have left to pay for additional things that come up. How much can you afford to pay back each month? I mean, this is really, I would say, the most important slide with all of this, because this starts the process. How much can you afford to pay back each month? Let's say you have the amount you want to put down, and then you have the amount that you want to take out as a loan. But that amount that you're taking out as a loan would mean a monthly repayment that's just too high for you. In two regards, it can be too high for you. The bank requires that your net income, meaning if you are a couple, your combined monthly net income after taxes, okay, be at least 3 times your monthly mortgage payments. So that's first and foremost. Let's say you are taking $1.5 million shekel loan because you have that other rest to put, to put down, and you find out that your monthly repayments are going to be 7,500 shekel. That won't work if your income is not 3 times that amount. Next is, let's say you even can afford that amount, but you decide that's not what you want to be paying. So it's a big, big part of it in figuring out what you can afford and what you want to be paying at each month. Then I love this question, and unfortunately the answer is just no. Does it make a difference if I'm an Ola, Olim? No, it does not make a difference anymore, guys. Definitely not. In your first home, we can discuss where buying a second home comes into play and using your Ola rights. But right now, being an Israeli gets you the maximum in terms of purchase tax and the loan to value, meaning the amount that you can borrow. Okay, so now that we know those basics, what does applying for a mortgage actually mean? Okay. When you apply for a mortgage, the first thing that you get is called an Ishor Ekroni. I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but you need to get an Ishor Ekroni, which is an initial approval. And this is just standard to check to make sure that the bank will approve you and your credit and your financial position that you can afford. This is not necessarily what's going to be moving forward with all the intricate details of your loan. It's also not like something you get that approval and that's going to be the terms that you then stick with. There is validity in time to that Ishor Ekroni. But it's very important that you start with that even before you put money down and sign a contract, because you need to know that the bank will approve you. In order to get an Ishor Ekroni, you need to show your identity by Teudat Zehut or passports, and you need to show your income. The bank will ask you for all your income. That is also a big part of our job, because whether you have income from Israel or you have income from overseas, sometimes you need to know how the bank will interpret it and which banks will interpret it best. So that's also what we do, not just for Israelis who have salary slips, but we are able to collect and use all your income to actually make the entire process better for you so that you can afford the maximum that you want to be affording. A very important part also when you apply for a mortgage, when you are buying secondhand, that means not something on paper. Like Debbie was saying, she helps people, but when things are on paper, when you're buying something secondhand that exists already, or also sometimes if you're doing, sorry, or sometimes if you're doing shiputzim, or you want to do construction or anything like that, you need to do an appraisal of the property, okay? It has to be a bank approved appraiser. You can't just necessarily always pick your own and then the bank will just be like, okay, it's a bank approved appraiser. The bank gives you a list of appraisers they use. You use one of them. And here is also very, very important because this goes back to how much can you afford, right? And how much you are taking out. The bank will use either the purchase price or the appraised value of the property, the lower of the two. So if you are taking 75% and you have that's why sometimes it's even important if you're taking maximum financing, if you're planning on taking 75% of the purchase price, it is definitely recommended to do an appraisal before you sign a contract. Because if the appraisal comes in lower than the purchase price, that's what you can get 75% financing on, okay? Really important piece of information there. By show of hands, who's bored? Guys, anybody bored? Should I continue? Are we okay?
Good.
Again, this is what I love taking off your heads, and I go through all the details with my, with my clients and make sure that everything fits your, fits your needs. But this is just, a basic overview, and I hope this has given you guys, food for thought or something that maybe you didn't know. Other requirements for a mortgage. People also don't always know what else they have to have money put aside for that you're going to need. Okay, every bank requires a registration fee. It's a standard rate. When you apply for a mortgage, it's basically to handle the banker's time and opening up the file and paperwork, which is a lot less, but they still charge the same amount now that everything's more digital. But that's a standard fee, so you have to understand that. As a mortgage consultant with a lot of connections with a lot of the banks, we very often, more often than not, get major discounts on this standard fee for our clients. So that already takes it down. When you are taking a loan in Israel, you will need to get life and property insurance. Okay, the life insurance is based off of the loan amount and the duration, meaning the length of term of your loan. So if you are taking a 1 million shekel loan, that is the life insurance you need to take. And property insurance is based off of the rebuild value, not the purchase price. These are all things that we discuss with our clients, how to help them, get it. But you need to have life insurance when you are taking out a mortgage in Israel, mortgaged to the bank. Like the beneficiary is the bank, because basically, God forbid, something happens to you or your, or your spouse. The other one, then the insurance takes care of that, and you are not left with a mortgage. Okay. There are times where we have clients who need to get a waiver for life insurance, and those are all things that we work with on a case-to-case basis. Just, like where would that come up? If you've been sick recently, I know, like for myself, I can tell you a personal story. I had cancer when I was younger. So if you have sometimes something chronic, or even if you've, recovered, then different insurance companies, you might want to, work through in different ways if you need a waiver or not, based on any of those kinds of things, medications that you're on and stuff like that. Additional costs associated with, with the mortgage. You will have, like I said, your agent fee, if you have one, purchase tax, a lawyer's fee, us, the mortgage broker, if you want to be making some changes. These are all things you need to have put aside, okay? Mortgage loans and rates. I will not give you a specific number. You cannot call me and say, okay, what will the interest rate be if I take out a loan? There are so many factors in it. I can tell you a few things that are standard, okay? You can take a loan for up to 30 years. That is the length of the term you can take a loan in Israel, just like you could only take maximum 75%. You can take up to 30 years, but it depends on the age. A bank will give you a loan up to 75 years, and in some situations up to 80. So if you are 60 years old, then no, you cannot take a 30-year loan. So that's very, very important. There are so many different compositions here in Israel: shekel-based, fixed, not fixed, foreign currency. Again, if you are earning in a different currency, then we can work through that. You can have dollar or euro linked. Again, we work through all those details. And I don't know if anybody's followed in the news recently the change that the Bank of Israel had said that they were going to be making in terms of how much variable you can use in your loan. Okay, and we got so many phone calls. Should we change? Should we refinance? When should we take a loan? All those different things. Bottom line, it hasn't come into effect yet, so we don't know. We also don't know how it's going to affect the housing prices now. It might make things go up because of investors who can take more variable possibilities than an Israeli can take. It might mean that the variable rate, which is called prime here, will go up in terms of what you can get. It'll be on a case-to-case basis. But just so you know, it's not cut and dry. You don't necessarily walk into the bank unless you have your reasons why you want everything fixed. There are definite reasons to have many different components to your loan and split it differently. And that is my job to help figure out what really works best for you. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay. Refinancing your loan. A lot of people want to know if it's even worth it or not. I will always, especially for guys, all of you, if any of you have a mortgage, I will offer you a free consultation and just tell you, even if it's worth it, speaking to the bank to refinance your loan. The first thing you do, if you want to go over the numbers by yourself, if you want to start figuring out if you want to refinance your loan, the best tip that I can give you is call the moked of your bank and ask for something called a siluk mashkanta, or a yitra. It's basically as if you were going to be paying off the loan, what you have left, what you've been paying, anything like that. And there are so many things you can do with refinancing without only just paying off your whole loan. You can pay some stuff back partially. There will be differences if you want to stay in the same bank or not stay in the same bank, pros and cons to all that kind of stuff. And again, there's also the possibility of, well, I want to refinance because I can't hack the monthly repayments I'm doing now. How can I do that? Can I lower my monthly repayments in any way, or can I shorten the term of the loan? So there are all these possibilities, and I'm happy to help you figure those out.
I don't understand. Is a siluk mashkanta simply what the payoff number today would be, or is it more than that?
It's more than that. It's more than that. Thank you. The siluk mashkanta not only tells you what you have left to pay off, but it also tells you where things started, where you started your loan, when you took it, if there are any penalties to pay back your loan, depending on the kind of loan that you took. Okay, if you took something that was linked to madad, right? If it was linked to inflation, maybe you have more to pay back than what you started with. Or maybe if you took something in the dollar and depending if the dollar went up or down, what you have left. And it also shows you what your formula is for each component of your loan to see if it makes sense. Like, would you even be able to get something better or not, right?
So it's a summary of everything known about the mortgage today?
Yes, from beginning to where it is now, from what you would need to pay back if, let's say, you just got a whole lot of money and you want to pay it all back, how much you'd be paying back, and the breakdown of how much you've been paying, what makes sense to pay. It's a complete breakdown of the loan. And definitely, as for me, my job makes it much makes it easier to analyze what you've been doing and what works for you in order to make sense, to make the most sense what the best form of refinancing would be. That's a great question. Thank you very much. So that's, like, I would say, the most basics. Okay. Now you might be thinking, well, if that's so basic and I just gave it over so quickly, why use a mortgage consultant? Well, fear not, I have a slide about that too. Why use a mortgage consultant? Besides the fact that I'm lovely and nice and fun and, we can hang out together, really, our job is to lower all the stress and anxiety around buying your home in Israel. It should just be an amazing experience for you. It is stressful moving.
I think you just have an echo of yourself.
I have an echo?
I just think for a second. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No problem. So it's really, there are going to be stresses that come along with it. You're dealing with the most important financial decision probably of your adult life. And our job is to make it as pleasant as possible and help as much as possible. And having an experienced consultant really can help with all of that. it's my full-time job. Everybody else, you're busy doing something else. So you don't want to be taking all your time speaking to various different banks, trying to find out what makes sense for you or not, while you're going through everything else that you're going through. But this is what I do all day. I do speak to banks and I do analyze people's mortgages and see what's best for you. So it also makes a big difference having a mortgage consultant who can advocate for you. It's not just about the bank. The bank's going to give you an offer. It really doesn't come down to just always the lowest monthly repayment. That may not be the best composition of a mortgage for you and for what suits your long-term needs. So besides also being an advocate for you, it's also being a liaison and guiding you through the process. I will speak to your lawyer. We will deal with, if you're buying from a contractor, dealing with the Kablan and their lawyers, a seller, making sure everybody is in line with what needs to be done from beginning to end. Not to mention, the most important part is saving you money and time over, whether it's monthly, over long-term. Yes, anybody can, with the right paperwork, get an approval from the bank, but it's really having your finger on the pulse and having connections with different people at the bank to know what makes the most sense for you and what bank you know to take the mortgage out with makes the most sense for you and what is the best fit for you. So that's really, besides saving you time and money and the stress, it's just a process that not everybody wants to get involved with, all the red tape and bureaucratic things going on here, and it is my absolute pleasure to help you with that. So that's what I got.
Well,
Just a huge round of applause. That was absolutely fantastic. Really.
Did I stop sharing?
so
I
I
stopped
came
it
in.
for you.
Did I stop sharing?
I stopped it for you.
Oh, you stopped it. Thank you.
Yeah,
So you're sure you have a
I have
question?
a couple of questions, if I could. Yeah, I came a little bit late. I do apologize, and it could be already answered these questions. I definitely see where you or a professional in your a professional like you could help someone who's getting a mortgage now.
One second, I'm going to ask you a huge favor. Just when I asked everybody in my house to answer the phone. Okay, sorry. I just wanted to stop ringing. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is it advisable for someone that already has a mortgage to come periodically to a mortgage broker like yourself to try and make sure that it is still in the best situation, or pretty much set it and forget it?
No, so that comes down to refinancing. Somebody who has a mortgage already, if they feel like there's, there might be a reason, a few things. One, to check what they have. Maybe it's worth it to refinance and make changes to one or more components of their loan. Or somebody wants to say, well, let's say I have some money. Does it make sense to put it towards the mortgage and refinance in that kind of way? It may or may not make sense annually, let's say, to do that. And I will tell you, if you only have a few years left of your loan, then no, it's not worth it, because the way the loans work is you're paying more of the principal in the beginning. You're paying more interest in the beginning, and then by the end, you're basically paying principal. And if you refinance when you have like 5 years left of your loan, then you're just restarting much more interest.
Well, unless you have some productive use for that money, like a business, you're going to buy a business or something.
What do you mean? Using your house as collateral, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, if you want to refinance and take more money, then that's also for sure a possibility. Let's say your house has, upped its value over from when you bought it, and you're not maxed at 75% financing on your home, and you want to take money out against your house. There are rules for that here in Israel also. Like I said, forget everything in America. You can't just take a home equity loan. You can't just say, wow, I'm sitting on all this money, my house is worth X, I want to take money against it and do whatever I want. The bank won't let you do whatever you want. You can take an all-purpose loan to pay off different loans. You can use it to purchase another property. You can do, there's so many things you can do, but you can't just say, you know what, I want to play the stock market and I want to take money off my house. To do that, that is something you cannot do in Israel.
You have to know in advance what you're going to do, and depending on what it is, the bank might say yes, or the bank might say no.
Right, and the rates will change based on it. An all-purpose loan will have different rates than buying to purchase a property or doing shiputzim in your home. Every different kind will mean different rates and terms with the bank.
And how much do you charge for consultation?
It's really on a case-to-case basis. There are standard fees and things like that, but I'd love to discuss that more offline when it comes to that, because it's not really just a blanket kind of
Understood.
thing.
Thank you.
Panina had a question as well, I think.
Yeah, I actually have two questions. The first one is, when they say that they'll only give you a mortgage till the age of 75 or 80, is that for the younger, the older, or the primary breadwinner? How do they decide? Like, my husband and I are 6 years apart.
The older, usually the older of the two. If the younger one is the main, the main breadwinner, then yes, you can do it, you could do it for longer. Again, so many things are case to case basis, and some things are also based on life insurance, because you can't get a lot of that stipulation is based on that you can't get the life insurance after 80.
Right.
So it's all, so it depends on, you can't necessarily get a waiver for both people, but you can get a waiver for life insurance for, let's say, one of them. And if you're using the income from the other person, and then you want to do it up to the age of 30, then that could, that can work, again, depending on many other specifics.
And I have another question. Like, in America, and I really appreciate the fact that you said just throw everything you knew, because I knew a lot, right? But because of the way life worked when we made Aliyah, we sold our house when the housing bubble had just burst. We have no money, savings, whatever. So now here we are at this point where my husband's turning 60 next year, and we're thinking about what our options are for the future. And I have heard some people say that in Israel, it's not always the wisest thing to try to purchase a house. In America, it's always the wisest thing to purchase a house. And first of all, you can still sometimes get 100% mortgages. But so my question is, if we have a couple who's in their mid to late 50s, early 50s and late 50s, and really have very little money saved up except for the Karen Hishtalmut, which will come through in a few years, but is it really like the thing that everybody, like somebody in our situation, should even be thinking about doing?
Okay, so that is so much more than just even a financial question. It's also an emotional question, because some people just want to own a home, and I cannot give you the answer. It really depends who you ask. You ask my husband, he would sell my house in 2 seconds, because it's quadruples in value from when we bought it. And as long as you're living in it, it's not worth anything. And who needs it? And then you could be somebody that's more saying, no, I want a home. I want to own something. I want to have it. That really comes down to not even a mortgage question. That comes down to the best sound financial advice, for you and your family, and what you want to then still have afterwards, if it makes sense on what your monthly, standard of living is, and how and what you're doing with that. But in general, yes, you do hear that a lot. It is pretty sound financial advice that at a certain age, paying rent will come out a lot less than, housing prices here in Israel. At the end of the day, it's Israel, and people keep on saying, oh, it can't get any higher, so
Right.
It might make sense to live not in the Americas. It might make sense to, yes, you can purchase a home, but if you want to stay in the, central area, then it may not make sense. But maybe you want to move up north of Afula, you can join my husband. He's happy to do that too. And, and then, that might make sense.
Yeah. I mean, my thinking is just simply from a purely financial point of view, all of the extra expenses and stuff that are connected to purchasing to begin with. If we could come up with 300,000 shekels, it might be better to just keep it in the bank and give it to the kids when we die, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I get that a lot. People are like, oh, let's say I can come up with the down, but then there's this, and then there's that. Yes, there are things that are associated with, with owning a home, and the, and the other things. Thank
you for answering.
Yoshua, I know you have a question. Just before we go back to Yoshua, does anybody else have a question? Rivka.
Yeah, hi. Ayelet, I sent it on your internal chat, but I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, no, I was concentrating purely on not messing up my sharing screen.
Okay, so a few general questions that some have no connection to each other. The one is, can someone borrow against the first property to buy another property?
Yes. You can.
How do you do that? You still need the down payment, or do you take the first?
It depends how much. It depends. I mean, a lot depends. You can take off your house. If your house is maxed at 75% already financing, then there's nothing left to take off of it to purchase something else. But if your house is increased, and right now the mortgage you have on your house is saying is like 25% of the value of your house, then you can increase that to borrow against it and borrow against the second home. Like I said, a second home, you can only get max 50% financing. So it depends on then just the 1 + 1, does that equal 2? Or are you going to have to, you know, fill that in? Also, very often the bank wants to know that you're not doing it all from a loan, but you have something to put down when you're buying a second property.
Okay, and when you said that they take 3 times your income, don't they take into account how many kids are in the house, like what they call nefashot?
So they take a lot of things into account, which is why I was also being conservative with 3 times, because officially the rule now is by the Bank of Israel that it's 40% of your net income. But that never ends up, like, I wouldn't go that, you know, wouldn't go that high up to 40%, because yes, there's so many other risk factors that they, you know, that they take into account. How many kids, you know, how many people in your house are you feeding? Are you a business owner or are you a salaried employee? Your age.
Is that better or worse to be a salaried employee?
Again, it depends on what you can show for income. You know, but I'm saying there's so many factors. It depends on if you have other loans. If you have a car loan or any other loans that you're paying off, that monthly amount gets deducted from your net income also.
Right.
So there are different factors like that. Yes.
And the last one, sorry, one last question. This might have come up for people. You know that often for business owners, so the Roy Cheshbon is asked to fill in this issue. I won't go into that because that's specific to me. But yeah, I was curious about how the bank treats that. But what more important, I was asked recently by someone who has money from overseas, please write me a letter saying that I have this income. And I said to them, you know, if it's an inheritance, you should be asking your lawyer from overseas.
Yes.
Why are the banks so insistent on an Israeli accountant?
They're not. Many banks, again, that's where I think a mortgage consultant comes into play, is knowing which banks will ask for which things and what bank makes the most sense for certain clients of ours to use, which is why we will go over everyone's financial position beforehand. It's not always the more the merrier. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to make a loan application with every single bank. Some are not relevant. So that is part of our job, to figure out what makes the most sense for you. I've used letters from US accountants many times.
And I allowed it. Okay, that's good, because then I would send them back to that. So thank you.
Maybe time for one more question. Yoshua, did you have?
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Hi. I just want to say she did a fantastic job. Ayelet did a wonderful job, and I think you might have forgotten to say one thing, maybe, unless I missed it. But if the translation alone is worth your weight in gold.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I should have put that. In.
When we bought a house in 2001, we sat at the bank. We didn't know what they were saying. I signed my name. I didn't know what I was signing, and I said my father would kill me, because he said, never sign a document you don't understand. And they just don't worry, just sign here. We were petrified, but we could have used you then, but you were probably 5 years old, so whatever.
So I can tell you this. Yes, the language barrier is a huge factor in understanding what the bank is even telling you, and even being able to understand that I would say probably is a huge aspect of lowering the stress, you know, in terms of buying it, because you don't know necessarily what you're getting. And as someone who's been here since high school, you can also have plenty of Israelis who speak Hebrew, because if it's not your field, then a lot of it is scary. My husband's in finance, and so when it comes to anything having to do with a mortgage, he'll still ask me, you know. So it's not just even about that, and it has to do with your field too, which makes a huge difference in being able to communicate, you know, with the banks and helping people out like that. 100%.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Ayelet, that was really great. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put everyone into breakout rooms. It's now 5:15, so I'll bring you out at 5. Sorry, it's not. I saw 15 and got confused for a moment there, but that's okay. I can do grade school mathematics, so we'll try that again. It's now 3:12. So I'll put you in till about 3:20. I'll give you warning before I bring you out. And when I bring you out, all those people who are a little bit late will have the opportunity to introduce themselves as well. And we'll have one more breakout room. So some of you did.
Can I say one thing? Just, I don't know if this was Yoshua's question, because now that I'm looking at the chat in terms of interest rates. Okay, I won't get into specifics, Yoshua. I'm happy to discuss it with you privately, but every kind of component, whether you're doing fixed or linked or variable, each one has a range. So that's why I can't give a You know, in general, basically, I will say your interest can go anywhere in Israel, depending on the component, from 2% to 4.5% if we're talking about buying a home. And then it will vary based on different components and terms.
Awesome. Okay, great. So I'm going to put you into break rooms now. And like I said, I'll bring you out at about 3:15, 3:25. So yeah,